The dorm room that no one would stay in. Emily Carter had just arrived at Millstone University, feeling excited and nervous in equal measure. Like most freshmen, she didn't know anyone and had no idea what to expect. She was assigned to West Hall, a dormitory that had been standing since the 1960s. Its brick exterior and old-fashioned hallways gave it a certain charm, but there was one room that everyone avoided, room 213. She didn't know it at the time, but room 213 had a reputation. Rumor had it that several students had been assigned there over the years, but none lasted more than a few weeks. Some swore they heard whispers in the middle of the night. Others claimed the lights would flicker violently, even when there was no electrical problem. Emily chalked it up to dormitory legends and didn't give it much thought. It wasn't until move-in day that she realized she had been assigned to room 213. Her roommate had dropped out last minute, leaving her alone in the room. The walls were bare, the single window looked out over a patch of forest, and the air smelled faintly of mildew. She unpacked her things and tried to ignore the uneasy feeling creeping up her spine. The first night was uneventful aside from the sounds. Around 2 a.m., Emily woke to soft scratching coming from the corner of the room. It sounded like fingernails on wood. She assumed it was the old dorm settling and tried to go back to sleep. But the scratching continued, growing louder, accompanied by a faint whisper. "Get out." She sat up, heart racing. "Hello?" she called out, but there was no response. The scratching stopped as abruptly as it had started. Emily told herself it was just her imagination and forced herself to sleep. Over the next few days, strange things kept happening. Her books would be moved from one side of the room to the other. Her laptop would turn on by itself, only to display a single phrase on the screen, "Leave now." She tried telling herself it was a prank or a technical glitch, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger every night. One evening, she stayed up late to study. Around midnight, she heard footsteps pacing the room. She froze, listening as the steps circled her again and again, never stopping. She gathered enough courage to turn on the lamp and there was nothing there. Yet, when she glanced at her desk, a message was scrawled across her notebook in perfect handwriting. "You shouldn't be here." By the end of the week, Emily was exhausted. Sleep-deprived and paranoid, she went to the dormitory manager to ask if she could switch rooms. The manager hesitated, as if she wanted to say something, but finally told her, "Room 213 has been empty for a long time. You're not the first to ask. Some students just can't handle it." Emily didn't wait for her to explain. She packed her things and moved into a different dorm that night. The strange occurrences stopped immediately, and she never returned to room 213. Years later, she heard a rumor from a friend who worked in facilities. Room 213 was once the site of a tragic incident in the 1970s. A student had died there under mysterious circumstances, and no one ever stayed in the room for long afterward. No one would officially confirm it, but the story stuck with her. To this day, Emily can still remember the way the room felt cold, heavy, and alive in a way that no other dorm room ever did. Some legends are true, and some rooms are better left empty. Story 2. The roommate who vanished overnight. Ethan was excited for his first year at Holloway College. He met his roommate Marcus on move-in day. Marcus seemed friendly but oddly private, never talking about his past or family. Ethan didn't think much of it at first. During the first week, everything was normal. They attended classes together, played video games in the lounge, and shared late-night snacks. But on the 5th night, Ethan was jolted awake by the sound of faint whispering. He rubbed his eyes and saw Marcus sitting on his bed, staring at the wall, unmoving. "Marcus?" Ethan called softly. Marcus didn't respond. The whispering grew louder, coming from the corner of the room. Ethan froze as he watched Marcus slowly stand and walk toward the wall, his hand reaching out as if touching an invisible door. The next morning, Marcus was gone. His bed was untouched, his backpack still in the corner. Ethan assumed he had gone home for a weekend, but when he asked the dorm manager, she frowned. "Marcus, no one by that name is registered here," she said. Ethan panicked. He checked with other students and security cameras, but there was no sign of Marcus entering or leaving the building. He started hearing whispers again at night, and small things began moving on their own. Books slid off desks, lights flickered, and cold drafts blew through the room despite the windows being closed. Weeks passed, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus was still there, watching. One night, he woke to see a figure sitting cross-legged on the floor in the corner, completely still. The figure slowly lifted its head, revealing a pale face with empty eyes. Ethan screamed, and the figure vanished. After that night, Ethan requested a room change and never spoke of Marcus again. Later, he discovered that years before, a student had died in that exact dorm room under mysterious circumstances. Some say his restless spirit still walks the hallways at night, Story 3. Whispers from the Abandoned Library Basement. Lila had always loved books, so when she got a scholarship to Grayson University, she spent most of her free time in the library. One evening, while researching for a history paper, she noticed a door she had never seen before, tucked beneath the grand staircase. It led to a narrow, dark basement. Curiosity got the better of her. She descended the stairs slowly, her phone flashlight barely cutting through the darkness. The air smelled damp and musty. Old shelves lined the walls, covered in dust and cobwebs. As she explored, she heard faint whispers echoing through the basement. "Hello," Lila called out, her voice trembling. The whispers stopped immediately. She laughed nervously and continued, but the whispers started again, louder this time, and seemed to form words. "Leave. Now." Heart pounding, Lila turned to leave, but the door at the top of the stairs was gone. Panic set in. She ran along the aisles, hoping to find another exit, but the basement seemed to stretch endlessly. Books fell off shelves on their own, and shadows flickered in the corners of her vision. Finally, she stumbled upon a small table with an old diary. Flipping it open, she realized it belonged to a student who had disappeared decades ago in the very same basement. The last entry read, "I hear the whispers. They call me. I cannot leave." Suddenly, the whispers grew into screams, echoing around her from all directions. Lila dropped the diary and bolted toward a faint light. She burst through a door and found herself back in the main library, exactly where she had started. When she told the librarian about the basement, the woman's face went pale. "There shouldn't even be a basement there," she whispered. Lila never went near the library after dark again, but she could still hear faint whispers in her dreams, calling her back. Story 4. The night the campus security disappeared, Ryan stayed late at Lyndon University's computer lab, finishing a last-minute coding assignment. By the time he packed his bag, the clock read 11:30 p.m. The campus was quiet, but Ryan had always trusted its security officers usually patrolled every hour. That night, though, he noticed something was off. Not a single light blinked on the golf carts. The usual hum of radios was gone. The campus was eerily silent. He decided to call the security office. The phone rang and went straight to voicemail. He tried again. No answer. Shrugging, he told himself they were probably busy with a routine check, but the silence pressed in on him, making him uneasy. Ryan left the lab and walked toward the main quad. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to move without wind. Normally, the quad was alive with distant voices or passing cars, but now it was dead quiet. Scattered golf carts lay abandoned on the lawns, some on their sides, others with lights blinking as if the drivers had vanished mid-ride. He called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" His voice echoed unnaturally. There was no reply. Then he saw them shadowy figures standing along the walkway. At first he thought they were statues, but as he drew closer, he realized they were human-shaped, motionless, yet somehow wrong. Panic set in. Ryan ran toward the dorms, but the shadows seemed to follow. Every turn led him into unfamiliar paths, though he had walked the campus countless times. The quad stretched endlessly, the familiar gates disappearing into darkness. Then he heard whispers. Soft at first, almost indistinguishable, then growing louder. "Don't leave. Don't go." Ryan froze. The shadows started moving silently, circling him. Their presence pressed in like the air before a storm. He stumbled backward, heart racing, trying to find a path out. Finally, he spotted the dorm lights in the distance. Relief surged, and he sprinted toward them, but the doorknob wouldn't turn. An invisible force seemed to hold him back. The whispers swirled around him, urgent and unintelligible. Exhausted, he collapsed on the grass. Then just as suddenly, the whispers stopped. The shadows vanished. The dorm door opened easily. The campus seemed normal again, as if nothing had happened. The next day, Ryan reported the incident. Security officers looked confused. All shifts were covered last night. Everyone was accounted for, they said. Students he asked claimed nothing unusual happened, but Ryan knew the truth. For a few terrifying hours, the campus had become something unrecognizable. Even now, he avoids staying late at the lab. He doesn't know what caused that night's events. Some say the university was built over a forgotten cemetery. Others blame strange magnetic anomalies. But Ryan is certain of one thing. For a short time, Lyndon University was a place where reality itself disappeared. Story 5. The late night call from my own number. Samantha was a sophomore at Riverview College studying journalism. She often stayed late in the library, chasing deadlines or researching articles. One quiet night around 2 a.m., her phone buzzed. She frowned at the screen. The caller ID displayed her own number. Confused, she answered. "Hello?" she whispered. A distorted, echoing version of her own voice replied, repeating her name over and over. Samantha's heart raced. She hung up thinking it was a prank, but moments later her phone rang again, her number flashing once more. This time the voice didn't just repeat her name. It described her exact location. "You're by the west exit now near the stacks." Samantha's hands trembled. She ran toward the front doors of the library, but the phone rang again before she could reach them. The voice now whispered details she hadn't told anyone. What she was wearing, the books she had checked out, the assignments she was working on. Panicked, Samantha tried to lock herself in the library lobby, but the phone's screen flashed with images of her from just moments before, taken without her noticing. Every time she turned around, she felt the presence of someone watching her, though the library was empty. She ran up the stairs, hoping to escape to the main hall. Her phone rang one last time. Samantha answered, and the voice said softly, "I'm closer than you think." The lights flickered, shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, and she felt a cold breeze brush past her. Finally, she reached the exit and bolted outside. The library doors slammed behind her as if pushed by an unseen force. Samantha didn't stop running until she reached her dorm. She checked her phone, no new calls, no new photos, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The next morning, she told campus security. Officers checked the library and cameras. "There's no evidence of anyone inside after midnight," one said. "No unusual activity was recorded. And the calls? They don't exist in the system." Samantha changed her phone number immediately, but for weeks afterward, she would occasionally receive calls from her old number. Each time, the voice whispered her name softly, almost like a warning. "I'm watching." From that night on, Samantha avoided the library after dark. She could never explain what had happened, whether it was some glitch, a cruel prank, or something else entirely, but the fear stayed with her. Every time her phone rang late at night, she jumped, half expecting to see her own number flashing back at her. Even now, years later, she doesn't walk alone past the library at night. The whispers of that night haunt her memory, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most ordinary places can hide the most terrifying things. Story 6. The locked door at the end of the hall. Daniel was a freshman at Crestwood College, assigned to a long, narrow hallway on the 3rd floor of Maple Hall. At the far end of the hall was a door everyone avoided. It was old, wooden, with peeling paint and a rusted lock. Rumors said it led to a storage closet that had been sealed for decades, but students whispered that strange noises came from behind it at night. Daniel had always been curious. One late evening, when the hallway was empty, he decided to investigate. He approached the door, feeling a chill brush against his neck. The lock was intact, but as he pressed his hand against the surface, he heard faint scratching from the other side. "Hello?" he called softly. No answer. The scratching grew louder, more desperate, almost like fingernails scraping against wood. Daniel stepped back, his heart racing. Suddenly, a low groan echoed from the door, followed by whispers. "Don't open, stay away." Against his better judgment, Daniel returned the next night with a small crowbar. He tried to force the lock, but it wouldn't budge. That's when he noticed the walls of the hallway seemed to stretch, the lights flickering in a pattern he couldn't follow. The whispers returned, louder, surrounding him. Suddenly, he saw its shadows pressing against the door from the other side, moving as if trapped. Daniel stumbled back, dropping the crowbar. The whispers turned into a chorus of voices, pleading and angry at the same time. He ran down the hall, heart pounding, and didn't stop until he reached the dorm lobby. The next morning, he told the dorm supervisor about the door. She frowned, her expression serious. "No one's supposed to be near that room. Some doors are locked for a reason," she said. When maintenance checked, the lock and door were untouched. No signs of tampering. No strange marks. Nothing. Daniel never went near that hallway again, but sometimes, late at night, when passing by on his way to class, he swore he could hear scratching and faint whispers coming from the locked door, reminding him that curiosity can sometimes awaken things better left alone. Story 7. The 3 a.m. lecture that wasn't on the schedule. Olivia was a junior at Hawthorne University majoring in psychology. One evening, she noticed an email from the registrar. A lecture had been added to her schedule unexpectedly. The lecture time? 3 a.m., she laughed it off, assuming it was a glitch. But when she checked the room number, curiosity got the better of her. At 2:50 a.m., Olivia arrived at the lecture hall. The building was silent, the doors creaking as she pushed them open. Inside, the lights flickered on, revealing a room full of empty desks, except for one figure at the front, standing behind the podium. "Hello?" she called softly. The figure didn't respond. As she stepped closer, she noticed the figure was wearing an old-fashioned professor's robe, and its face was obscured by shadows. A cold draft swept the room, carrying whispers that seemed to come from every corner. "You shouldn't be here, it's not your time." The lecture began without words. On the projector, images flashed rapidly, students she didn't recognize, hallways she'd never seen, and dark figures lurking at the edges. Olivia felt her head spin as the room seemed to stretch and warp around her. She tried to leave, but the doors slammed shut. Panic set in as the shadows in the images seemed to move toward her. whispering warnings in voices that sounded almost human. Olivia pressed herself against a desk, heart racing. Then, as abruptly as it began, the projector shut off, the figure vanished, and the doors creaked open. Olivia ran back to her dorm, trembling. The next day, the registrar had no record of the lecture. No professor, no room assignment, nothing. She told a friend who laughed nervously, warning her not to mess with campus ghosts. From that night on, Olivia avoided late-night study sessions in that building. Even months later, she couldn't shake the feeling that the lecture hall still watched her, waiting for the clock to strike 3 a.m. Story 8. The Student Who Never Existed. Jordan was a sophomore at Riverview College, excited yet apprehensive about living in a shared dorm for the first time. He had been assigned to room 214, a modest space with peeling wallpaper and a faint musty smell, and he would be sharing it with 3 other students. 2 of them were easy to get along with, chatty, welcoming, and already well acquainted. But there was the 3rd roommate, Alex. Jordan thought he had known Alex for weeks, but their interactions were minimal. Alex was quiet, often sitting cross-legged on the corner of his bed with headphones in, staring at a laptop screen for hours. He never spoke much, never laughed, never shared anything personal. Sometimes, Jordan thought he caught Alex watching him with a piercing intensity, but when he approached, Alex would smile politely and look away. One morning during breakfast in the dorm lounge, Jordan casually asked one of his roommates, Mark, about Alex. "Hey, do you know what classes Alex is taking?" Jordan said, trying to make conversation. Mark paused, frowning. "Alex? Who's that?" Jordan laughed nervously, thinking Mark was joking. "The guy in our room with the headphones?" Mark shook his head. "No one named Alex lives in this dorm. I've never seen him before." A chill ran down Jordan's spine, but he brushed it off as a prank or a misunderstanding. Yet, in the following days, small, unnerving things began to happen. Books he distinctly remembered Alex reading vanished from the shelves. Snacks left on the desk disappeared. Sometimes Jordan thought he saw a shadow moving past the dorm windows, and fleetingly, Alex's reflection appeared in the cafeteria glass. But whenever he turned, there was no one there. One rainy night, Jordan awoke to the soft creaking of footsteps outside his door. His heart raced. "Alex?" he whispered, though the sound of the word felt foreign and absurd. The footsteps stopped abruptly, leaving a suffocating silence. Trembling, Jordan approached his desk and noticed a notebook lying open that hadn't been there before. The pages were filled with handwriting that he did not recognize. Every line, every word was addressed directly to him. "You see me, I'm always here. I watch when you sleep, when you laugh, when you think no one is looking. You cannot leave me behind." Terrified, Jordan checked the dorm records the next day. Every official document showed the 3 registered students, but no Alex. No roommate had ever existed under that name. Even the past occupancy sheets, stretching back decades, had no record of a student by that name in room 214. Despite this, Jordan couldn't shake the feeling that he was never alone. At night, he could hear the faintest scratching of shoes on the hallway floor. Whispered words just on the edge of comprehension slipped through the walls. Sometimes he would wake to find his bed sheets twisted in patterns he didn't create, as if someone had been lying beside him, tracing shapes into the fabric. Unable to endure the constant anxiety, Jordan requested a room transfer and moved out shortly after. But even months later, he swore he could hear faint footsteps echoing through the empty corridors of Riverview College, soft murmurs that didn't belong to any living person. He sometimes caught glimpses of a shadow in the corner of his eye, lingering too long to be mere imagination. It was as if Alex had left a piece of himself behind, a mark invisible to everyone else. Jordan had learned a lesson too late. Some presences are not bound by official records, and some students leave impressions on the world even when they never existed. Even now, when Jordan walks past old dorm buildings or empty hallways, he feels it a quiet, unnerving certainty that somewhere, someone is watching. And he can't help but wonder whether Alex ever truly existed, or if he was something else entirely, a shadow bound to Riverview, feeding on the minds of those who noticed him. Story 9. The Fraternity Secret Room in the Attic, extended version. Liam was a freshman at Hawthorne University, full of curiosity and reckless bravado. The Delta Phi fraternity house had long been the subject of whispered legends across campus. Upperclassmen spoke in hushed tones of secret rooms, unspeakable rituals, and members who disappeared without explanation. Liam, new and eager to prove his courage, found himself drawn to the house like a moth to flame. The stories were vague but chilling. There was supposedly a hidden room in the attic, forbidden to anyone outside the fraternity. Some said it was used for hazing, a place where initiates faced humiliating or terrifying challenges. Others hinted at something darker rituals that no outsider should witness, strange symbols carved into the walls, and chants that summoned forces beyond human understanding. One late autumn night, when most of the fraternity members were away, attending a campus gala, Liam decided he could wait no longer. Armed with only a flashlight and his racing heartbeat, he slipped through a side door, left ajar, and entered the house. The interior smelled faintly of old beer and waxed wood. Every step echoed unnaturally. He ascended the narrow staircase to the attic, each creak under his weight magnifying the silence. At the top, he found a trapdoor cleverly hidden behind a stack of old trunks. His pulse thudded painfully as he lifted it, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. Liam hesitated, a deep, instinctual fear gnawing at him, but curiosity propelled him forward. The ladder creaked with each step until he reached a dimly lit room. It was filled with old furniture coated in dust, trophies faded by decades, and walls etched with strange, angular symbols that seemed to writhe in the beam of his flashlight. The air smelled of decay and something metallic he couldn't place. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the room, bending corners where no walls existed. Then he heard it. Low, guttural murmurs, almost chanting, coming from a corner so deep in darkness that it seemed to absorb the light. Liam froze. A chill ran down his spine as he felt icy fingers brush against his arm. Yet when he whipped around, there was nothing. The whispers grew louder, forming words he could barely comprehend, like a language remembered from dreams he had never had. Panic surged. He bolted toward the ladder, heart hammering, but the trapdoor slammed shut behind him with a force that shook the walls. He yanked at it, but it wouldn't budge. Finally, summoning every ounce of strength and fear-driven adrenaline, he climbed back up and forced it open, escaping into the cold night air. His lungs burned as he descended the staircase, never looking back. The next morning, trying to prove he hadn't imagined it, Liam returned to the attic, but the room had changed. The trapdoor was gone, leaving only the plain wooden floor and a seemingly normal attic space. No symbols, no furniture, no whispering voices. It was as if the room had never existed, erased from reality itself. Even weeks later, Liam could feel it. The attic's presence lingered, a subtle pressure in his chest when he passed the house. Sometimes he would see the corner of his vision flicker, shadows moving independently of any source. At night, the murmurs returned in his dreams, chilling and insistent, whispering secrets he couldn't understand, yet felt compelled to obey. The fraternity never spoke of the attic. No one would confirm its existence, and those who tried to investigate often found nothing. Yet, Liam knew the truth. Some rooms exist, not in the physical world, but in layers of reality that intersect with human fear. They wait for those daring or foolish enough to enter. Liam never returned to the house, but the memory haunted him, lingering like a faint pulse in his mind. He had discovered a place that defied logic, a hidden corner of the world where shadows were alive, and whispers carried the weight of something ancient and malevolent. And he knew, deep down, that the attic had not let him go, not truly. Story 10, the professor's final assignment. Short version. Maya was in her final semester at Crestwood University taking a night class in ancient history. Professor Hargrove was known for his strange, almost obsessive approach to teaching. He spoke often of forbidden knowledge and truths too dark for daylight. On the last day of class, he gave a peculiar instruction. Your final assignment, he said quietly, is to finish your paper in the library after midnight, alone. Maya laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. Each student received a specific time slot. Hers was exactly 12 a.m. That night, she arrived at the old campus library. The doors were unlocked, though the building was supposed to be closed. Inside, the silence was suffocating. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as she set up her laptop. For the first hour, everything was fine, but then she noticed the shadows. They moved not with the lights, but on their own. Whispers began to rise between the aisles, faint at first, then louder. Every time she typed a sentence, her laptop screen flickered, showing a reflection of someone behind her, a tall, thin figure that vanished when she turned. Her notebook suddenly slid across the table. The pages flipped open, revealing words she hadn't written. Don't finish it. Don't leave heart pounding. Maya grabbed her things and ran for the door, but it was locked. The lights went out. In the darkness, she saw him, Professor Hargrove, standing at the far end of the library, his eyes black and hollow, his grin too wide to be human. The whispers grew into screams. Books fell from the shelves, pages tearing and swirling like a storm. Then, without warning, the doors burst open, and she stumbled into the cold night air. The next morning, Professor Hargrove was gone. His name vanished from the staff list, his office emptied, and the final assignment disappeared from the syllabus. Maya never returned to that library, but sometimes when she studies late at night, her laptop flickers, and in the reflection, she swears she sees those hollow eyes staring back.